The moment Blake Shelton walked onto the set, the energy in the studio shifted. The applause was loud, but it carried an edge, the kind that comes when an audience senses something unpredictable might happen. Blake smiled his familiar easy grin, tipping an imaginary hat as he took his seat across from the panel. Joy Behar leaned back slightly in her chair, arms loosely crossed, her expression half curious, half skeptical. Whoopi Goldberg gave a welcoming nod, and the other hosts exchanged quick glances, already bracing for sparks. At first, everything followed the usual rhythm. They talked about Blake's latest music, his time on television, the humor he was known for. Blake joked about songwriting, about life on the road, about how fame never quite prepares you for being recognized in the cereal aisle. The audience laughed, and for a few minutes, it felt like just another lively segment. Then the conversation drifted, as it often did on the show, toward culture and politics. Joy leaned forward, tapping her card lightly against the table. Her tone sharpened just enough to change the temperature in the room. "So, Blake," she said, "you've been pretty vocal about certain values. Do you ever think about how those views land with people who don't come from the same background as you?" Blake chuckled, but it was more of a reflex than genuine amusement. "Well, Joy, I think everyone's entitled to their opinions. I sing country music, I write what I know. Doesn't mean I don't respect people who see things differently." Joy raised an eyebrow. "Respect is one thing, influence is another. You've got a massive platform." Blake nodded slowly. "That's true, and I use it to be honest. Folks back home appreciate that." The word, home, seemed to hang in the air. Joy smiled, but it was tight, edged with challenge. "And by back home, you mean a very specific audience." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Blake shifted in his chair. "I mean people who feel like they don't always get heard," he replied. "That shouldn't be controversial." Joy let out a small laugh. "It is when it turns into dismissing other experiences." Before Blake could respond, Whoopi interjected, trying to smooth things over. "Let's remember we're talking about music here too." But Joy wasn't finished. "Music doesn't exist in a vacuum," she said, eyes locked on Blake. "When artists weigh in on social issues, they shape narratives." Blake's smile faded. "I'm not trying to shape anyone's narrative. I'm just being myself. And that's exactly the issue," Joy shot back. "Being yourself, when you have power, isn't neutral." The tension thickened. Blake inhaled, choosing his words carefully. "Joy, with respect, I think sometimes people hear what they want to hear. I've never told anyone how to live." Joy leaned closer. "You don't have to tell them. Implication does the work for you." The audience gasped softly. Blake's jaw tightened. "That feels unfair," he said. "You're putting words in my mouth." Joy shrugged. "I'm interpreting impact." The other hosts exchanged uneasy looks. Sonny Hostin glanced at Whoopi, silently asking whether to step in. Whoopi hesitated, sensing the segment slipping off script but also knowing cutting it short might inflame things further. Blake straightened, his voice firmer now. "I respect this show. I respect you. But I won't sit here and be told I'm some kind of villain because I don't think the way you do." Joy's eyes flashed. "No one called you a villain. But defensiveness says a lot." That did it. The room felt like it had snapped taut, like a string pulled too far. Blake let out a sharp laugh, not amused. "Defensive, or just tired of being lectured?" The audience reacted instantly, some clapping, others murmuring in discomfort. Joy opened her mouth to respond, but Blake continued, momentum carrying him forward. "I came here to talk about music," he said, "not to be cross-examined." Joy crossed her arms. "This isn't a concert, Blake. It's a talk show. And conversations go both ways," Blake replied. "Right now, it feels like you're talking at me." Whoopi finally stepped in, her voice calm but commanding. "All right, let's take a breath." But Joy wasn't ready to back down. "If you can't handle tough questions." Blake cut her off. "I can handle questions. I won't handle accusations dressed up as curiosity." A hush fell over the studio. Cameras zoomed slightly closer, capturing every flicker of expression. Joy's smile vanished entirely. "That's your interpretation," she said coolly. Blake shook his head. "No, that's the reality of how this feels." For a split second, it seemed like he might laugh it off, make a joke, diffuse the tension. Instead, he stood up. The audience erupted in gasps and scattered applause. Whoopi's eyes widened. "Blake, I think I'm done here," he said, voice steady but edged with frustration. "I don't see this going anywhere productive." Joy stared up at him. "Walking away doesn't make you right." Blake paused, looking directly at her. Neither does talking over someone. Producers could be seen gesturing frantically off camera. A floor manager moved closer to the stage. Whoopi tried again, softer this time. Let's not end it like this. Blake picked up his jacket. I didn't start it like this. As he turned toward the exit, the studio buzzed with stunned energy. Some audience members stood, unsure whether to clap or stay silent. The cameras followed him for a beat longer than usual before cutting back to the panel, Joy's expression unreadable, Whoopi rubbing her temples, and the sense that something far bigger than a normal TV spat had just unfolded. Backstage, the air felt colder than the brightly lit studio Blake had just left behind. The hum of generators and muffled voices echoed through the narrow hallway as a producer hurried after him, clipboard clutched tight. Blake slowed, running a hand through his hair, his jaw still set. He could feel his pulse in his ears, the adrenaline refusing to settle. Blake, wait, the producer called softly, careful not to escalate. Let's talk for a second. Blake stopped but didn't turn around. I've said what I needed to say. Behind him, the studio lights dimmed as the show cut to a commercial break. On stage, the panel sat in uneasy silence until the red light went off. Joy stared down at her notes, then tossed them aside with a sigh. Whoopi leaned back, exhaling slowly. Well, Whoopi muttered, that went sideways. Joy crossed her legs, chin lifted. I asked a question. Sunny glanced at her. You pushed. Joy shot her a look. That's what conversation is. Offstage, Blake finally turned to face the producer. I don't mind disagreement, he said, voice calmer now but still firm. I mind being boxed into something I'm not. The producer nodded. I get it, but you walking out wasn't planned, Blake finished. Neither was being cornered. The producer hesitated, then lowered his voice. They're saying you were kicked off. Blake let out a short, incredulous laugh. Figures. Back in the studio, the commercial ended, and Whoopi addressed the camera, her tone measured. All right, folks, as you just saw, things got a little heated. We value open dialogue here, even when it's uncomfortable. Joy leaned forward, and sometimes uncomfortable conversations make people leave. The audience murmured. Whoopi shot Joy a warning glance but continued. We respect Blake Shelton as an artist. Clearly, emotions ran high. Social media, meanwhile, was already ablaze. Clips of the exchange spread within minutes, captions ranging from praise to outrage. Some hailed Blake for standing his ground. Others criticized him for walking out. Joy trended too, supporters applauding her for asking hard questions, critics accusing her of provocation. In his dressing room, Blake checked his phone despite telling himself not to. Messages flooded in. Friends, fellow musicians, his team. He sank onto the couch, reading silently, the weight of it all settling in. One message stood out, simple and direct. You okay? It was from someone who knew him well, someone who understood the balance between public persona and private frustration. Blake typed back, yeah. Just tired. Across town, Joy sat in her car, staring out at traffic inching along. The adrenaline had faded, replaced by a familiar nod of reflection. She replayed the exchange in her head, every word, every interruption. Part of her bristled at the criticism already pouring in. Another part wondered if she'd pushed just a beat too hard. At the network offices, executives gathered around screens replaying the segment. Ratings projections spiked. Publicists drafted statements. The phrase, kicked off, was debated, dissected, polished for press releases. Was it accurate? Was it fair? In television, perception often mattered more than nuance. The next morning, Blake woke early, the quiet of his home a stark contrast to the chaos online. He poured coffee and sat on the porch, guitar resting against the chair beside him. Music had always been his refuge, the place where words made sense again. He strummed absent-mindedly, a melody forming without effort, shaped by the tension of the previous day. Later that day, Joy appeared on a radio show. When asked about the incident, she didn't dodge it. I don't regret asking the question, she said. But I regret that it ended without resolution. Walking away shuts down dialogue. Hours later, Blake released a short statement. No anger, no accusations, just clarity. He emphasized respect, disagreement, and the importance of listening both ways. He didn't name Joy directly, but everyone knew who he meant. The narrative kept evolving. Headlines softened. Think pieces emerged about discourse, celebrity responsibility, and the limits of daytime television debates. Fans debated not just who was right, but why the exchange struck such a nerve. A week later, on The View, Whoopi addressed it again. We're not afraid of tough conversations, she said. But we're also human. Sometimes things don't land the way we expect. Joy nodded. I'd still talk to him, she added. Off camera, if he wanted. That comment rippled outward, shifting the tone. Suddenly, the idea of reconciliation hovered in the air. Not an apology tour, not a dramatic reunion, but the possibility of understanding. Blake saw the clip late that night. He didn't react immediately. He thought about the millions watching, the noise, the labels. Then he thought about the porch, the guitar, the song slowly taking shape. He didn't respond publicly. Instead, he finished the song. When it eventually surfaced months later, fans noticed the lyrics weren't angry. They were reflective, about speaking up, about walking away, about how sometimes the loudest moments leave the deepest echoes. The incident faded from daily headlines, replaced by the next viral clash, the next outrage cycle. But for those involved, it lingered differently. Joy became more deliberate, choosing her moments with sharper care. Blake became more selective with appearances, valuing spaces where conversation felt mutual. In the end, no one really won. There was no clean verdict, no final word. Just a reminder that when worlds collide on live television, the fallout doesn't end when the cameras stop rolling. Sometimes, it's only just beginning.